In the vast, uncharted regions of the galaxy, where few dared to venture, the majestic ship of Queen Cthera of the Zyrene Empire glided through the stars. The Zyrene were known for their regal and ruthless nature, with Cthera as one of the most powerful queens in the galaxy. Her empire had subjugated countless worlds, and she was feared throughout the galaxy. But despite her overwhelming might, fate had other plans. Out of nowhere, a powerful surge of energy hit Cthera's ship, disabling its systems. Alarms blared as the ship spiraled out of control, pulled toward an unknown, inhospitable planet. Her crew fought valiantly to regain control, but it was too late. The ship crash-landed, scattering debris, and leaving the once imposing vessel in ruins. Disoriented and injured, Queen Cthera stumbled out of the wreckage. The air was thick and heavy, making each breath a struggle. Her regal armor was battered, and her once glowing crown was cracked. Her eyes, a deep violet, scanned the surroundings. The planet was hostile, its atmosphere dense with toxic gases, and the sky was a swirling mass of clouds that emitted flashes of strange energy. Cthera's advanced communication systems were destroyed, leaving her stranded. She was alone, except for the faint traces of life she could sense nearby. Desperate, she started to move, her pride refusing to allow her to give in to the despair that gnawed at her. Hours passed, and the queen grew weaker. The Zyrene were formidable, but this planet's environment was relentless, and she was succumbing to it. Her vision blurred as she collapsed to her knees. Just as her consciousness began to fade, a figure appeared in the distance. A lone human, clad in an exosuit, approached her. Humans were considered weak and insignificant by the Zyrene, a primitive species barely worth noticing. But this one, he was here, on this forsaken planet. With a steady hand, the human knelt beside her, examining her injuries. Cthera's pride flared. How dare a human approach her so casually? But before she could protest, her body betrayed her, succumbing to exhaustion. Darkness took her as the human lifted her from the ground. Cthera awoke in a makeshift shelter, the cold metal walls of a human survival pod surrounding her. She groaned in pain, her body still weak from the crash. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she saw the human, tall with broad shoulders, his helmet resting on a nearby crate. His dark hair was damp with sweat as he worked on what appeared to be a basic medical kit. "You're awake," he said without looking up. His voice was calm, steady, as if saving alien queens was an everyday occurrence for him. Cthera's violet eyes narrowed. "You are human." Her voice was weak, but filled with indignation. She attempted to sit up but winced in pain as the gashes on her side flared. "Yeah, I get that a lot," he replied with a smirk, not taking offense to her disdainful tone. "And you're not exactly in a position to complain. I just pulled you out of a wreck, and that atmosphere out there would have killed you in another hour." The queen tried to process the situation. This human, of all creatures, had saved her. A lowly species she had never thought twice about had been the one to rescue the most powerful queen in the galaxy. "Why?" she demanded, her voice laced with confusion. "Why would you save me?" He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You needed help. Doesn't matter who you are or what species you belong to. Out here, we help each other, or we die." Cthera's mind whirled. The concept was foreign to her. In the Zyrene Empire, strength ruled, and weakness was punished. But this human, he had acted without hesitation, without seeking reward or leverage. "I am Queen Cthera of the Zyrene Empire," she said, her voice regaining some of its authority. "You have no idea who you've saved." The human chuckled, shaking his head. "I don't care if you're Queen of the Stars. Right now, you're my patient, and you're not going anywhere until you're healed." As the days passed, Cthera's injuries healed under the human's care, though her pride remained bruised. The human, whose name was Marcus, was a scavenger, stranded on this hostile world after his own ship had been damaged. Unlike Cthera, he had been here for months, adapting to the planet's harsh conditions. Despite herself, Cthera found a begrudging respect for him. Marcus was resourceful, using whatever he could find to keep them alive. He had built a shelter, rigged up basic systems to provide breathable air, and even managed to find edible food sources in the barren wasteland. His survival skills were impressive, far beyond what Cthera had ever expected from a human. One night, as they sat around a small fire, Cthera spoke the question that had been gnawing at her. "How did you survive here for so long?" Marcus shrugged, poking the fire with a stick. "Humans are good at surviving. We adapt, we fight, we don't give up easily. That's how we've lasted this long in the galaxy. No matter how tough things get, we find a way." Cthera was silent for a moment, contemplating his words. She had always seen humans as weak, insignificant creatures, but here, in this desolate place, she saw something else. Resilience, determination, a will to survive that rivaled even her own. "You are stronger than I thought," she admitted quietly. Marcus raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on his lips. "Thanks. I'll take that as a compliment." As weeks turned into months, Cthera and Marcus formed an unlikely bond. They relied on each other for survival, their differences fading as they faced the dangers of the planet together. The Zyrene Queen, once filled with disdain for humans, began to see Marcus not as a lesser being, but as an equal, someone who had saved her life not once, but countless times in their struggle to survive. One day, their long-awaited rescue finally arrived. A Zyrene fleet, sent to search for their missing queen, descended upon the planet. Cthera stood beside Marcus as her people landed, their ships gleaming against the dull, storm-filled sky. As the Zyrene soldiers rushed to escort their queen back to safety, Cthera hesitated. She turned to Marcus, her eyes filled with something she never thought she would feel for a human: gratitude. "You saved my life," she said quietly. "I owe you a debt." Marcus smiled, shaking his head. "You don't owe me anything, Your Majesty. Just take care of yourself out there." Cthera nodded, her regal demeanor returning as she stepped onto the transport ship. But as the doors closed behind her, she couldn't help but look back one last time. She had been saved by a human, something she would never forget. As the ship lifted off, carrying her back to her empire, Queen Cthera realized that the galaxy was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. Strength wasn't just about power. It was about resilience, survival, and the ability to stand by others, even when all hope seemed lost. And in that moment, she knew that humanity, so often underestimated by the rest of the galaxy, was far stronger than anyone had ever realized.